Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School's Canyon Country Discovery Center, offering hands-on exhibits, educational tours, and a variety of field-based hiking and rafting adventures. From day trips to week-long adventures throughout the Colorado Plateau. Nearby attractions include Canyonlands National Park, Hovenweep National Monument, Natural Bridges National Monument, Monument Valley Tribal Park in Cedar Mesa. FourCornersSchool.org.
Blog Talk Radio.
To an astounding future that lies ahead, one that will be here sooner than you think, and one that you have an important role to play in bringing about. At the World Transformed, we want to introduce you to what may be the biggest transformation of them all, the one that begins with considering and acting on the almost limitless possibilities that lie ahead, and that ends somewhere beyond the reach of the human imagination. So, when does that amazing future begin? Well, today is the day. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-blogger, co-futurist, and co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Phil. How are you?
Well, I'm super fantastic. How are you, my friend?
Man, doing great. Hope you are as well. And man, we've got a packed show tonight. It's sometimes we have like three topics and we have trouble fitting them all in. And tonight we have a lot more than that. So
tonight we got 7 topics. We counted up before. And as you say, sometimes we have just 2 or 3. We have a hard time making them fit in an hour. A lot of times we have a kind of a running list of topics, and then we do a catch-up show once in a while. And we had so many great topics to talk about tonight, except for one that came in late. I thought we would do them all. Okay, we would make a real effort here and see how much future we can cover, because as we both know, Stephen, there will be more future next week. So we can't. We can't dilly-dally. We've got to jump into this now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We can eat all we want. They're going to make more.
They're going to make more. Crunch all you want. They'll make more. That's exactly right. I called this show "The Little Blue Light That Changed the World," and I just named it after one of our topics. In fact, in keeping with our recent theme, I should have called this show "Why Peter Thiel is Wrong About the Future," because that's kind of our big philosophical thing that we'll end on. But I didn't feel like calling him out by name in the name of the show, and I just really like that idea of a little blue light that changed the world. Is it possible that something seemingly small and insignificant like that could really make a big difference? Well, here we have the story. The inventors of the blue LED light bulb just got a Nobel Prize. And I'm embarrassed to say off the top of my head, it must have been in physics, right? What other could it that have possibly been in? It must have been the Nobel Prize for literature, not chemistry.
My apologies. I heard the article, and if it mentioned it,
Actually, I've turned to the article, and it's right up top. 2014 Nobel Prize in Physics. Okay. Went to the 3 scientists. Okay. Yep. Who gave lightning a makeover by inventing blue LED lights. Okay, so what's the big deal about the blue LED? You see them a lot. I was interested to read that this only happened in the early 90s. Because I know LEDs have been around longer than that, and in fact the article tells you, sure, we had green LEDs before that, and we had red LEDs before that, but then blue came along, and something magical happened, which is, for those who know about RGB technology, red, green, blue, that's the same technology that lay behind the original color television tube. If you mix red light, green light, and blue light, you can get white light. You can get the full spectrum of light, including white, which includes all variations of light. So, by inventing the blue LED, these 3 Japanese scientists made it possible for there to be an LED light bulb. And Stephen, do you understand why that's a big deal? I'm sure you do.
Well, it's a big deal because with an LED light bulb, we get 83 lumens per watt of electricity that is burned. And by comparison, Edison's a light bulb, the incandescent bulb, you would get 16 lumens per watt of electricity used. So that, that's just a remarkable difference. I mean,
more than 4 to 1, more than 4 to 1 ratio there.
And here's another thing to consider. So you're burning less electricity because of that. But in a household with a bunch of incandescent bulbs, you also tend to heat up the household. And in places particularly like the South, where you're heating up the household, that just means that you're having to run your electricity more. And so, so if you're not heating up the house, you're burning less electricity and getting more light, and you're also burning less electricity in cooling your home. Then that's great for a guy who lives in Louisiana or in Texas or any place that's it's a little warm. That's a good thing. So, I'll tell you another great thing about the LED bulb. It beats the compact fluorescents all to death in just the light quality, and it's also no toxic. If you break the bulb, you're not going to be turn your house into a Superfund site. There's no toxins released. So and that's a positive. And whenever you can.
I feel if ever there was a not ready for prime time technology shift that has occurred, it is this top-down mandated shift from incandescent bulbs to CFLs. For the reason you state. I mean, okay, they're ugly, but you can get used to the ugly. You can actually adjust to the ugly. You can adapt to that. What I find bizarre is you have this like light bulb in your house that if you break it, there's this really intense cleanup process that's supposed to go on. This disposal process around them is, something that I don't think most people follow, frankly. I think most people, when they get done with their CFLs, they sneak them into the trash, as they do with their batteries. Yeah. Okay, that's just really what happens. That's not good either. But this created another instance of that, which is putting mercury out into the environment potentially, and so a mandate intended to help the environment actually ends up potentially poisoning the environment. But these babies, as you said, LED bulbs don't have that chemical toxic downside to them, and they burn for 25,000 hours using a quarter of the energy of incandescent bulbs. Truly, and not generating all that heat, as you said. Truly, these could be the little blue lights that change the world. I think it's a great story and well deserved Nobel for those three scientists.
Andrew, who's my 9-year-old, was helping me put in some LED bulbs in in our den, and he was looking on the package about how long they last, and he did a little quick math and said, "Dad, I'll be 22 when you have to replace these things." So
that's awesome.
He's 9. So anyway, that's pretty great. I can tell you that compact fluorescents don't have, except the ones or the originals that are still burning for some reason. The ones that we bought in the store would last 6 months, 9 months, maybe, and you'd have to replace them every year. So not these guys. So yes, they're more expensive, but ultimately it's a better deal all around. So.
Well, they cost more than twice as much as the CFLs, but they last a lot longer than twice as long. So it seems like it's a good
and don't forget all that electricity you're saving. So it's a good deal all around. So.
Boy, the preceding has been paid for by the American LED lighting.
By Philips, the LED people.
Well, now let's do a commercial for transparent solar cells. Tell us about this one, Stephen.
Okay, this is really cool. Transparent solar cells. It's basically it can take some glass and lay a film over the glass and harvest light, energy from light, but allow the visible light spectrum to pass through. In other words, it's what it's harvesting is infrared, that kind of thing, and so that's probably a good thing anyway, that it's blocking infrared light from entering a building. That would lower heating bills again, right?
Right.
And at the same time, you're harvesting electricity now at a much less rate than a normal solar panel. But come on, it's a lot cheaper than a normal solar panel, and it can be put in places that you wouldn't put solar panels. Like, how about glass skyscrapers? You can just slap a layer of that over the whole thing practically, right? And harvest enough electricity to really put a dent in their electric bill. So that's awesome, and that's pretty cool there. But what about things like your cell phone? Turn the screen of your cell phone into into a source of electricity to help charge the battery. Now, what it would end up doing is just being somewhat of a extension on the life of your battery, because you wouldn't be able to get enough electricity that way to charge.
Just run it all the time, yeah.
You just run it all the time that way, but you could certainly you could get enough to lengthen the life of your battery, and you can have it over the screen, and hey, maybe the back of the phone as well. Why not? And maybe the one on the back of the phone could get the entire light spectrum, since you don't have to see through it. So,
right. Of course, in that case, you could put an actual solar collector there, right? An actual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
small panel.
At any rate, great idea. Look forward to seeing how they use an idea like this. And you know what? Here's one more idea. Doesn't mention an article, but since we're just throwing out ideas, how about Google Glass? Put it. You need to protect your eyes from infrared, block the infrared, and collect energy at the same time for your Google Glass. So that's
there you go.
That one's a freebie, guys. I'll just throw that one out there for the engineers.
There you go. So Google, you know where to send the check, and if you don't, just write to Stephen and send me money at yahoo.com.
Yeah, that's right. Just keep writing zeros.
There you go. A couple of observations on this. First off, once again, we have the lovely discrepancy between people who write stories, people who write articles, and people who write headlines, right? Because the headline here is totally transparent solar cells could turn our windows into solar panels. Awesome. You get two sentences into the article. How? By covering glass in a material that captures energy from the invisible parts of the light spectrum, but still lets in visible light. In other words, translucent solar cells. Okay, well, for those of you keeping score at home, translucent and totally transparent are not the same thing. Okay, so we're talking about something that is going to, in some way, filter out visible light. You'll see something there, right? If you put it on a window, the outdoors is going to look a little darker than it did, or a little blurrier, or something, right? It's going to interfere with the light coming in, and that only makes sense. As I thought about it, as I read that word and I said, "Hey, rip off," they said totally transparent. Now they're saying translucent. It occurred to me, I don't know any way it could be totally transparent, right? Because then it would just be passing all the light through, right? There's got to be something in there that's catching something.
Well, if you're only catching infrared and allowing all visible light through, then it would be totally transparent. Now I don't. You're right. The way that's written makes it sound like that it, that's blocking it in some way. Blocking some visible light. That's why they're calling it translucent instead of transparent. But I don't know. We'll just see. I think that the technology, if they've got something that's close to being 100% transparent, but not quite all the way there, they need to continue to refine it, because I think that if it's totally transparent, then the level of adoption will be much greater, and you can use it for so many other things. You can't have a blurry screen on your iPhone. People are not going to accept that. Or even a dimmer screen would be, wouldn't really be accepted very well. It needs to be completely or are practically completely transparent. Are people?
Yeah, I would say it has to be practically. It has to be essentially transparent. It has to be so close to transparent that you don't care. And that's got to be really close, for it not to matter to people. I mean, it has to be extremely close for that not to be for that not to be a factor.
A lot, and and when you look out your window, you want to see what's on the other side, right? So
and I don't want any tinting on my screen or anything like that. I want it to be as sharp and clear as it can possibly be. But I will say this idea is really part of the whole. It's a small part, but probably an important part of the kind of solar future we're headed towards. We've talked quite a bit about the solar singularity and the amazing progress they're making with the efficiency of solar panels. And there have been these really imaginative ideas about solar highways and solar parking lots and solar collectors on rooftops and all these kinds of things. And this fits right into that world. Bottom line is, every bit of sunlight that doesn't get used is just going to waste, right? It's just you've got this awesome thermonuclear reactor hurtling energy at us all the time. We need energy badly. We go to great lengths to produce energy so that we have it to consume, and we're going to get closer and closer to a balance between those two things. We're going to ease up on wasting that energy because we're going to get better and better at capturing it and better in using it. For all of human history, we've wasted it because there was no practical way to make use of it. But we're getting better and better at figuring out how to do that. And as we do, I think every available surface that can suck in a little light and make energy out of it, if there's a net benefit to that energy, we'll do it. Why wouldn't we? I think it's a real straightforward equation, and the kinds of application you were talking about is spot on. Big glass skyscrapers. You're not going to cover the whole skyscraper in solar panels because you can't see out then. But in that case, those windows tend to be a little tinted anyhow, right? You could put something on. You could put something on there. People would never even notice, and suddenly you're collecting at what did it say, like 1% the rate of a solar panel. Well, that's not great, but you know what? That's better than the energy you were collecting before. And to your point, you don't have all that infrared energy getting in there and heating the building up, and it's just a win all the way around. Once we get to the point that can be done affordably.
Think of it this way: think of the surface area of one of these glass skyscrapers. 1% of the collection ability it means that think of it this way: 1/20th. It'd be like having solar panels 1/20th the size of the skyscraper out there collecting, or at least the side of the skyscraper that faces the prevailing, the sun.
That's right.
That is, that's a huge. That would be the equivalent of a huge solar array, and so it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be all that efficient to be an incredibly useful and get a lot of power that way. It's just it's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's developed, and I suspect that if they're doing 1% now, that if they continue to refine things like this, it tends to get better. And so 1% is just what we're looking at right now, and it still sounds pretty great. So
it does. I agree. Yeah. And thanks for setting me straight. That's not 1% of what a solar panel would have gotten. It's 1% of the total energy available. Solar panels will get about 20%. This will take about 1%. So as you said, it's about a 20th of what that would have done. So there you go. Two great energy stories, both about light, both about saving energy, both about technologies that are coming on strong and promise to make life a lot more interesting. Now here's I think we're ready for a complete shift of gears here, because now we're going to talk about why NASA is researching ways to make people sleep for a long time. They're funding research on deep sleep for transporting astronauts to Mars. NASA is getting pretty serious about doing a manned mission to Mars, and so one of the technologies that they're researching is essentially hibernation technology. How can we put a person to sleep for months at a time to avoid the there's a couple of sides to it. One is you can avoid all the boredom of the long space travel by sleeping through, essentially a 6-month trip, and you can avoid all the massive resource consumption that a person requires. Because the idea is, if you put somebody to sleep, well, their caloric requirements go down, the amount of light they need, the amount of heat they need, all these things plummet, and you've actually got a much more efficient way of moving human beings from point A to point B. Especially if you got a fairly large-sized crew on this spaceship that you're sending to Mars. This starts to sound like a pretty attractive idea. What they're talking about is actually not just putting people to sleep. They're talking about putting them into a state called torpor, which means that your metabolic and physiological activity has been slowed down significantly. Basically, they're going to drop your body temperature by about 10 degrees, and that's going to slow your metabolic rate anywhere from 50 to 70%, they say. So that is a shut down person. That's like a bear hibernating, I would guess.
Right.
And they talk about
think about it this way: if your metabolic rate is 50 to 70% lower, you're getting the benefit of needing 50 to 70% less caloric intake, right?
Right.
But it's even better than that, because the calories that you would get in such a state would be a liquid drip. Okay.
Right. Yeah, they don't have to be interesting.
Yeah, much easier to transport than the steak and potatoes and the fresh fruit and whatever else that a person would feel like, oh my gosh, I can eat, I can drink an Ensure and survive on it for weeks at a time, but gosh, on about week number 3 I'm going crazy,
Right. Well, yeah. I'm already bored to death on this trip, and now I'm sick of Ensure too. Yeah, I mean, there's a real psychological downside to putting people in those kinds of circumstances.
That's right. So you can avoid all that, and you know what? And if you happen to have an astronaut that's a few pounds heavier than he or she needs to be, you can put them on a pain-free diet too, while they're on their way to Mars as well. So. There's another upside there. So
there you go. Actually, think of all the non-space travel related applications that could be achieved here. I mean, people undergo intestinal bypass surgery. If what you just described really worked, people might do it Earthside, right? I mean, they might say, okay, look, I've been trying to lose weight forever. I'm just going to take a 6-month sabbatical from everything here. They're going to put me into the sleep, and when I wake up, I'm going to have dropped 60 pounds or
whatever
it would be. Yeah. You'd have to be in a pretty forgiving, I'd say a pretty cush government job to get back to your job after something like that. But leaving those technicalities aside, there are some potential problems with this. Okay, one is you're cooling people down significantly. You use this inhaler, you use these cooling pads, you get them into this very cold sleeping state. Pneumonia is a clear and present danger for people when you put them into that state. Also, there's this whole issue of muscle atrophy. What's going to happen to somebody who's been asleep for 4 or 5 months? Chances are their muscles aren't going to be doing anything but just sort of rotting away. We talk about somebody could lose all that fat. They could essentially lose all the muscle off their body too during a process like that. So, and I think NASA has in mind for people to pretty much use their muscles when they get to Mars. So that's a non-trivial problem. That's one that they really have to look at. That and bone loss. And if you're weightless in that spaceship, that's going to be going on anyway. So this is an issue that they really have to be that they have to be aware of and be working on. The bone loss wouldn't be an issue on Earth, but the muscle loss would. That would just be a.
Well, I think that you just about have to hook up TIMS units to your astronauts to exercise their muscles, contract them with electrical stimulation. Just about would have to do that, and you'd probably have to rotate them as well. I think if you could perhaps reduce some of your the tendency to get pneumonia and things if you're rotating them, periodically.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So, anyway, yeah, it's there's a lot of problems associated with what, but we kind of buried the lead on this one, Phil. According to this article, SpaceWorks, apparently the independent contractor that NASA is paying to research this, has reportedly managed to keep a person in stasis for a week.
Yes. Now, in our defense, I'll point out that Digital Trends buried the lead on this story because that shows up in the last paragraph, right?
Right. I mean, to me,
and that is impressive.
I would put that thing.
Yeah, that is extremely impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, I would put that as my headline. SpaceWorks has reportedly managed to keep a person in stasis for a week. That's my headline, right?
That's
there.
Huge. Yeah.
So, and this is a different technology, but it reminded me of something we talked about over the summer, Phil. You remember the article in the New York Times that we mentioned over the summer, killing a patient to save his life?
Yes, that's right.
And that, I mean, they are really they're replacing a person's blood completely with a substance that allows them to basically bring the temperature of the body down to, freezing basically. You're not reducing temperature 10 degrees. You're reducing the temperature a lot more than that. And these people are clinically dead. And why in the world would you ever do that to somebody? Well, the only reason you're doing it is in order to buy the surgeons time to correct something like a gunshot wound or something like that.
Right.
And you do this with someone who would not have had a realistic chance any other way. And so this is a trial, a human trial that's being done in Pittsburgh, and it was. I thought it was interesting. The legal issue on that, Phil, was basically the people of Pittsburgh said, if you don't want to be a part of this trial, you need to come to the hospital and opt out on the off chance that you're shot.
Right.
And it's you in the hospital. Well, and not a soul in the city of Pittsburgh opted out. I think everybody understands that if you're in that kind of bad situation, then you may be lucky to be the person experimented on in that circumstance because you really didn't have a chance otherwise. So
absolutely.
Any rate, not the same, but it's another interesting.
In the same vein, they both have to do with slowing the body down, curbing metabolic processes. Both have interesting potential, if not life extension possibilities, just kind of time travel possibilities. I'm always intrigued by the idea of you're older, and as an alternative to cryonics, something developed out of one of these technologies might be very interesting. You're very sick, you're not enjoying much quality of life, but you think maybe you will when technology comes along in a few years. So, something like this, not this exactly, but something modified out of this, something that evolves out of this, might begin to present an alternative to you. Let me just shut down. Let me just go to sleep for a year or two, or 10, possibly. Who knows what the possibilities will be there, and check back in when technology catches up. It's essentially the same as cryonics, except for you haven't died, right? Technically, you would. With this process, you wouldn't have died. It's the one you were talking about. They tested in Philadelphia. That's a gray area, isn't it?
Yeah. They're calling it clinical death.
Yeah. So I guess you would have.
I mean, by any measure, the person is dead. Nothing is going on. There's no heartbeat. There's no brain activity. The only thing that's not happening that you would expect to happen in someone who's dead is decomposition, and that's not happening. Right. And so it buys time, so that maybe they can get that bullet out of the chest and correct correct whatever is causing the person to bleed internally or whatever, and then they can bring them back. And and it's pretty remarkable. They've done it in animals a lot, and they feel confident that it'll buy. It's at least a chance for people that wouldn't have had a chance otherwise. So I'm interested in hearing how that trial goes.
Interested in seeing what they do with all of these kinds of technologies. And speaking of interesting developments in medical technology, we've got this story out of Australia over on abc.net. That's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, not the American Broadcasting Corporation. Everybody's got their own ABC, I suppose. The headline is, Scientists Discover Cancer-Fighting Berry on Tree That Only Grows in Far North Queensland. So this is really interesting. This berry from the blushwood tree grows in a remote part of Australia, has been synthesized into a drug that appears to have remarkable tumor-killing properties. It's really quite amazing what they're doing. In about 75% of the cases, the tumors that are being treated, they're treating animals with these, have disappeared and have not come back. Now, the interesting
doing this for horses and dogs and things like that. And,
right. Important thing to note is these are tumors that occur in the skin, on the head, and the neck. This is not for metastasized tumors in the body. It's for tumors that are treated generally externally, or that you can reach with a needle. But for melanomas, but for those kinds of tumors, it's showing a remarkable effectiveness.
And it says here in the article that it's a single, it's a compound within the seed of this berry, and it's a very, very complicated process to purify this compound. And at any rate, once they do and they inject it into the tumor itself, it does three things, and it's amazing that it does all of this. It kills the tumor cells directly. It cuts off the blood supply to the tumor, and it activates the body's own immune system to clean up the mess that's left behind from the dead tumor.
Right.
That's pretty great. I mean, what else? What else could we ask of something?
It's interesting. One of the doctors talks about the fact that compound is in this berry, and they don't know why it's there. What interesting evolutionary trail led to that chemical being in there? But thank goodness it's there, because it turns out you can do something really useful for people.
Maybe it was the plant fighting some sort of plant health problem, and the plant needed it for some reason. But whatever the reason, it's pretty great. And my hope is that now that they've found this compound and know how that it can be synthesized without having to rely on this fairly rare berry that only wants to grow in very specific kind of places. They've had no luck in being able to get the berry to grow or to be cultivated in non-isolated areas. It's a picky berry, apparently, about where it wants to grow. So my hope is that they can synthesize it, and it can be something that they can use on humans as well. So, but it's still pretty amazing, and 75%. That's success rate with that. That's pretty great.
It's fantastic. And one of the things you have to wonder is, let's get this going in human trials. But if that compound potentially couldn't eventually have some effectiveness against other kinds of tumors too. Right now, they've turned it into a drug that's really only good for this one kind, which is huge enough. Not to be ungrateful for what it's doing there, but something that's that good at getting rid of cancer, you got to say, gee, well, let's see if we can't figure out a way to make it to get it in there against some of those other tumors too. Really encouraging story, and there was a time there when it seemed like we were seeing a cure for cancer every week, and I'm glad we're seeing them again. Every time I see a cure for cancer, I'm encouraged. I know that it's not the end of cancer yet, but maybe we're seeing the beginning of the end for cancer with all the various developments.
The problem with cancer is that every cancer is like its own disease. I mean,
right.
Cancer is a huge family of diseases, is what it is, and so we can find a cure for cancer every week and still have forms of cancer hanging on for quite some time. So it probably won't be one magic bullet for all of it, and so. Let's just keep.
So let's keep finding a cure every week.
Keep having. Let's keep.
We got them all.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I guess
Absolutely.
tonight is our night.
Go ahead.
We're just hitting a lot of medical news because our next story is another medical story.
Take it away. What do we got?
Okay, we got a high sugar diet, no problem for genetic mutants. Okay, so you ever wonder why Patrick Stewart is so fit?
Why how he stays so gaunt? That's right, absolutely.
That's right.
And Hugh Jackman, for that matter, and Halle Berry. I mean,
that's
look at
right.
them. They're all
how these guys in such good shape? It's high sugar diet.
No, actually, this raises the question of why is Kelsey Grammer so chunky? Really, I think. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. We pushed the joke farther than it needs to go. Go ahead.
I think we're taking that about as far as we can go. But it is a type of it's a mutated C. elegans, which is a favorite worm of scientists. It's been they use that worm to experiment, do all kinds of experiments. So don't they, Phil? We have a C. elegans story at least once a year, seems like.
Well, yes, cancer's been cured in C. elegans for years. They've had life extension for a long time too. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
They're enjoying the fruits of our future technologies today. These little these little tiny worms. Yeah.
Lucky.
So what's going on with
anyway,
C. elegans these days?
Okay, so they found a gene that they can alter in these worms and feed them a high sugar diet, and unlike their brothers and sisters that don't have this gene mutation, they stay thin and svelte, and whereas the other worms that don't have this mutation are getting fat. So it gives drug makers another target, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, we know that sugar makes us fat because of the complex and fascinating chemistry of insulin regulating blood sugar levels in our bodies, and the metabolism of fat is this at one point. On the one hand, really complicated thing, but on the other hand, very simple thing. Whereas if we never ate any sugar, by and large, obesity probably wouldn't exist, right? I mean, is that too sweeping a statement? I think that's actually pretty close.
Not
to
really.
the truth.
Not really. I can tell you that low carb diets work really great for some people, and only marginally better than caloric restriction in others. I don't know why that is, but I've seen that. But I happen to be one of the people that it works for. And if I'm not eating sugar, Phil, I become pretty thin. I drop the weight. Unfortunately, I love the sugar. Just.
It's a problem. Yeah. It's everywhere. It's kind of hard to get away from. Actually.
Carbs are awesome. They taste great, but they also make me fat. So if I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing and regulating that properly, then I tend to get thin. But what if there was some a drug could come along and that we could take, pop a pill once a day maybe, and eat however we want to, and have abs, and not even have to spend 10 minutes. Not 10-minute abs, just 0-minute abs, right? So that would be pretty great. And so, hey, and it's not just, and we're not just talking vanity here. We're talking serious health problems that could be avoided: type 2 diabetes, you name it, and
heart disease,
heart disease,
joint problems,
cancer,
all kinds of things that are associated with obesity. Absolutely.
If you're obese, you're more at risk for cancer, and lots of reasons not to be obese, and sex appeal is just one of them, and so pretty great, and looking, that would love some help, guys. I'm trying to do my part with low carb dieting, but a little help would be great. So
Well, a little help would be great in a society that just throws carbs at you all the time.
That's right.
You know, not to say that it's not possible to do, because I have done it, and I know people who do it successfully. But it can be really tricky. It can be tricky when you're not in control of what you're eating. You know, when you're at institutional events and things like that, and it's like that's all they serve you. When you're in someone else's home, it can be tricky. It's like, oh, okay, I'll eat some. You know, actually, it's not like you mind doing it in one sense, but it's also like, well, here I go, I'm eating carbs again. But putting all that aside, the medical side of this is really is really quite interesting, because we got the same gene that the C. elegans has, essentially, or we have a counterpart to it. And as you said, Stephen, there's no reason why ultimately we couldn't tweak that gene ourselves, or, as they talk here, maybe a little more practically, put a pill in place, a small molecule drug that will target that gene and basically
activate it short term. Activate that gene short term with you know, like you said, with a small molecule pill. And man, that'd be awesome. You know, and just take it every morning and get fit. That would be that's the dream there, man.
Yeah, I think in the future we will have drugs that do that, and we'll have myostatin inhibitors to make our bodies more muscular. And ultimately, I think people will just be engineered such that we will be a lot more sugar resistant and a lot more naturally muscular than we currently are, because we'll be healthier. You know, as you said, putting all the moral character issues aside and all the sex appeal issues aside and all the rest of it aside, people would just be a lot healthier if they didn't have to contend with this. And they do have to contend with it, which is why we have this obesity epidemic.
And now let's put the sex appeal back into it. That'd be pretty great, too. So
there you go.
So all around, awesome reasons for pursuing that. So cool. So that's
all right. Well, now we've got 2 stories left, and I believe that our next story requires a special introduction.
Sound good. Oh yes. Let's introduce this.
That's so. This is our first legitimate Tales of the Paranormal, and I don't know how long. It's been a while for sure. At least a couple of years. But thank you, Stephen, for sharing this story with me, because this is the kind of headline I just love, and I don't feel I see enough of this sort of headline. But I hope everyone followed the link at blogtalkradio.com or over on worldtransform.com. 10-mile spacecraft and 60-mile highway discovered in 1968 moon photo. Oh, I read that wrong. 10-mile spacecraft and 60-mile highway discovered in 1968 moon photo? Question mark. Okay, so it's a question.
mark.
They're not saying it was for sure. They're just asking. Okay, so we've got this we've got this picture of the moon taken in 1968. Actually, this article over on theexaminer.com links to, actually embeds the video that goes into this at much greater depth. But basically, here's what we got. We've got a crater on the moon that, if you look at inside of it, there's a protuberance sticking up, which is unquestionably a spacecraft. I think there's just, there's no getting around the fact that that's a spacecraft. But as you're zooming in on this meteor with the, zooming in on this crater with the big old spaceship in it, you pass this highway on the moon. And I'll tell you, the highway on the moon really kind of got my attention, because I'm thinking, if they didn't Photoshop that, that is a really interesting phenomenon. Here you have these 2 parallel straight lines running for miles and miles along the lunar surface. If that's a legitimate photo, then, although I don't believe it's a highway, I would be very interested to know what phenomenon caused that. Would you agree that that's an interesting looking structure on the moon there?
Oh yeah, the highway is a lot more interesting to me than the quote spacecraft end quote. I would suspect that there is there's a reason for this highway as well. It's I've seen other too straight to be anything but artificial things on the moon before, and it turned out to be natural and not artificial. And usually what it amounts to is something that hits the moon and rolls a long way, and things roll in that low gravity forever.
Right.
So that's you get a fairly round asteroid striking the moon. Instead of making a crater, it just skips along the surface a long time and just keeps rolling. And so that's it can cause something like that. And I would expect that. Now, this quote spacecraft. I hate to be the party pooper, Phil, but that's I think that's a shadow issue. You can even see in the picture immediately in front of what they purport to be the spacecraft a continuation of the geological thing that continues from the spacecraft onto the side of the crater. You see at the level of what would be the cockpit of that spaceship.
Yes.
There's sort of a line on that spaceship, and you see how that line continues past the front of the spaceship on the crater itself. It's obviously a shadow issue. I would love it.
Stephen, I have to say that you're going farther with this than I did, because I looked at that and I said, okay, where's the spaceship? Is it under the rock? Is it behind the rock? Because I see a rock. Okay, I see like
so
an outcropping of
you're not buying
rock.
Either.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's not. I mean, on the one hand, you gotta love the imagination of somebody poring over these old lunar images and have that eureka moment where they go, "That's it! Finally, proof of UFOs. Here's a flying saucer in a crater." But I would never have seen a flying saucer in that crater. If you had shown me the picture, it would never even have occurred to me that was anything other than a rock.
You know what's funny is these people are saying, and there's this highway that's very close by. Well, it's not all that close. You're seeing vast distances, and the highway's not going to the spaceship. So basically, you're asking me to believe that you got this huge spaceship out there in this crater, a 10-mile-long spaceship, okay, in a crater, and I'm seeing a highway that's apparently completely unrelated. I guess different aliens did that at a different time.
It's just proof that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on the moon. Okay, that's
come on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm sorry that
the highway come from the spaceship. I would have been impressed with that. That would have been pretty great. But no.
Well, that would have been better. Yeah, it would have made a little more sense. I also love. I don't know if you actually watched the video, but they compare a picture of the crater that shows the spaceship in it with another one taken from, I guess, Earth or like low Earth orbit of the moon, and they say, "See, and look, here's the same crater, and you can't see the spaceship in there." And I'm like, "Yeah, no kidding. This one is taken from 200,000 miles away, and I can't see anything in that crater. It proves absolutely nothing." But
actually,
it's like
I do
Mulder's
see a structure
poster.
that might be that spaceship. Which is actually the rock.
Okay, you can see it. I couldn't see anything.
I can,
but
see. It looks almost like a Q. Okay, you see the little line going up into the round crater there on the kind of on the left, going from the bottom left into the crater a little bit. That little geological structure there. I think that geological structure is the spaceship, as seen, the quote spaceship as seen from the right angle. So.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think
there
that,
you are. So sorry, guys, I'm not buying it.
You remember Fox Mulder on the X-Files? He had that poster hanging up in his office. I want to believe, and if you want to believe,
I want to believe too.
You'll find it. But as much as I want to believe, you got to show me something better than a rock. I'm sorry, I just a big rock doesn't do it for me. The straight lines were interesting. The big rock, no. Sorry, that is no. That's no moon, and it's no spaceship either. Okay, so we've left a few minutes here. And now let's get into our philosophical topic of the evening. I think that going straight from Tales of the Paranormal to Virginia Postrel writing that Peter Thiel is wrong about the future is a great transition. Okay, this is an interesting transition because it's like two kind of buzzkill stories in a row. We were the buzzkills just now, but now basically who's the buzzkill in this Peter Thiel is wrong about the future story? Basically, what Postrel is saying is that Neal Stephenson and Peter Thiel have both kind of gone on the record saying, hey, we used to have these grand, glorious visions of the future. Now we don't have those grand, glorious visions of the future. What's wrong with people? What's wrong with kids today? That we aren't working on the big Apollo-type projects, and we're not imagining this beautiful future, and we're not making the big things happen anymore. We've kind of talked around this in the past, but I found Virginia Postrell's response to this really interesting. What she says is that the answer isn't that we need more optimistic science fiction with more glorious visions of the future. She said what we need is a better view of the present. And that had not occurred to me before, but it makes a lot of sense.
Phil, I think what she ultimately says is that we need a better view of how rotten it was in our past.
Yes.
And therefore we'll be able to judge based on that how great we have it now, and continue to believe in the power of improvement going forward from here. And she mentions a couple of TV shows that are getting that right. And which ones is she mentioning?
What's it called? The Nick?
Yeah, the Nick. And the Nick is and it's about medical technology back in the early 20th century, right?
Right.
They're just getting light, just getting electric light into the hospitals, and X-rays and things like that are all just very experimental things at that point. And it's a story about one New York hospital where they're just arrogant enough to try some of these new things, and that's to me that's great. And I guess I'm going to have to subscribe. What is this, an HBO show?
It's an HBO show. Yeah.
Okay, I guess we got now an HBO commercial. We really need some checks coming our way, Phil, because we're advertising for a lot.
Well, as Amazon Prime, eventually you get those HBO shows. Eventually, right? If you wait around.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll catch it when it rolls around.
If you wait around long enough. But I personally, since we're doing testimonials, I do subscribe to HBO because I have to see Game of Thrones, so it's ridiculous. But I do that.
Hey, catch this and give me a review sometime of the Nick, because that sounds like
definitely will. I haven't seen it yet, but I'd like to check that out. But yeah, that's a great reminder of one of the most straightforward ways to understand how well we have it today, which is another way of saying how bad it used to be. Is to think about medical technology. I mean, that is one of the clearest indicators of that. Sanitation in general is a good thing to think about. Nutrition is another one. And actually, there's almost no aspect of our lives that you can name that hasn't vastly improved over the past 100 years. But some things are just more dramatic. When you think about what you faced when you had heart disease 100 years ago versus what you face today in terms of treatment options, in terms of what happens to you when you go into the hospital. I haven't seen the show The Nick, but I can imagine that their modern progressive things that they're doing, turn of the century things that they're doing, are absolutely horrifying to people watching them today. And those are big advances over what was possible before. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
the bottom line is
you probably were getting the best treatment possible in that day and age at a very progressive hospital where they're at least trying some new things. And so but I'm sure it would look barbaric to our eyes what they were doing. So anyway,
what Virginia Postrell is saying is that in the 60s when we had glorious visions of space travel, we had an idea of progress. We had a notion of the idea that you and I, Stephen, call the human imperative had caught on a little bit. It was part of the zeitgeist at that time, and we've walked away from that. If you believe in progress, if you believe that things are getting better all the time, then naturally you're going to have a fairly positive view of the future. If you don't believe in progress, if you believe that things are getting worse, if you believe that our efforts only make things worse, which is patent nonsense, but it's a very popular belief these days, then it's hard to have that happy view of the future. So in a sense, it's possible that Neal Stephenson and Peter Thiel are only sort of contributing to the problem when they complain about how things aren't as good as they as good as they used to be.
I got to tell you, Phil, I love Virginia Pastoral, but here's the thing: she picked the wrong, bad guy for this article. Peter Thiel, is one of the heroes. He's, she mentions in the article that no less than 3 billionaires, and then she says 3 again. Can you believe it? Billionaires are basically starting their own space program. Well, Peter Thiel is one of the, is the 4th billionaire in a way because he's part of the founders program of SpaceX. In other words, he's a major, major contributor. In order to be part of the founders, I'm sure it's multi-millions that he's contributed to SpaceX. And so, Virginia, he's complaining that a lot of people have this problem, but he's not saying that that he thinks that that the future is that there's no future. Obviously, he believes in it because he's investing in it. He's putting his money where where his dreams are, and I think he's one of the good guys too. And so, yeah, I agree with the ultimate thesis of this article. I'm, as I do with most of what she writes. I love her book. The Future and Its Enemies is a great book, but I just think she's picking on the wrong guy here. She may have misunderstood what he was saying.
Well, I'm not sure that she is. She's responding to the book. I can't think of the name of the book, wherein she says that he laments the demise of grand 20th century dreams and the optimistic culture they expressed. So I believe she's taking him to task specifically for that statement on his part, and to her credit, gives him credit for the fact that he's definitely pushing things in the right direction. But entirely possible that he's pushing things in the right direction, and maybe even Peter Thiel doesn't understand how good we have it here in the present. That's the the possible conclusion that I come to from reading this. But yeah, nobody more appreciative of the things he's doing to help make the future than we are here at The World Transformed. And that's why, again, we didn't call this show Peter Thiel is Wrong About the Future, because we didn't want to be calling him out. I think it's the big takeaway there is that we've got to keep the past in mind relative to the present, relative to the future, to really have an image of where we're going. Because Virginia Pastoral, with her idea of the dynamists versus the stasists, is one of the good guys. Peter Thiel is one of the good guys. And, of course, we do what we can here at The World Transformed to keep everyone aware of the fact that things have gotten better, and we think they're going to get a lot better, probably sooner than you think. All right, Stephen, what's our music this evening?
It's Unquiet Nights performing Nobody Wants to Know.
Nobody Wants to Know by Unquiet Nights. Thank you so much, Stephen, for putting that together. It's been great zipping through these 7 topics with you tonight. We'll look forward to an all-new show again this time next week. And until next time, live to see it.
You
Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School of Outdoor Education. Located at 7,100 feet near the base of the Abajo Mountains in Monticello, Utah, the school's Canyon Country Discovery Center campus is an ideal location for your next tour or vacation. They invite you to visit and learn about Utah's unique canyon country through day trips or week-long adventures. More at fourcornerschool.org. Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School's Canyon Country Discovery Center, offering hands-on exhibits, educational tours, and a variety of field-based hiking and rafting adventures. From day trips to week-long adventures throughout the Colorado Plateau, nearby attractions include Canyonlands National Park, Hovenweep National Monument, Natural Bridges National Monument, Monument Valley Tribal Park in Cedar Mesa. fourcornerschool.org.